Good morning, students. Today our topic is respiration, chapter 11. Our objectives for this topic will be to define respiration and to explain the types of respiration and to understand the release of energy in both types of respiration. What is respiration? Like, we all perform different types of activities in our daily life, like for example breathing, sleeping, seeing, running, walking, performing different jobs. For all these activities we need energy. Without energy we will not be able to perform any of that process. So for those processes to going on smoothly, we need energy, and that energy comes from a process that is known as respiration. In animals, like cells produce chemical energy from the degradation of the organic food molecule. That food molecules come from the photosynthetic activities of plants. Plants, as we all know, that they are autotrophic organisms. So they get their energy from the sun, and the sunlight or the radiant energy from the sun is converted into chemical form of energy. That chemical form of energy is then stored in the food molecules which they make or which they synthesize. After the production of food, some of that food material is used by the plants themselves in the process of respiration to get energy from for their cells, and the rest, which is not used by the plants themselves, which is extra food molecules, they are stored in fruits which other organisms feed upon, like herbivores. So that energy is then transferred into herbivores body. So when those animals they eat that food, it goes into their bodies, and then the breakdown of that food molecules occurs, at the end of which we releases energy which is stored in that food molecules. Let's define respiration. Respiration, as it is an important biochemical reaction, the processes of oxidation by which food materials are oxidized to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Now here the oxidation process occurs whether completely or incompletely. In complete oxidation, the following reaction, the reaction which is given in this slide, is the complete breakdown of food molecule. And the complete breakdown or the complete oxidation of food molecule, like glucose molecule, in the presence of oxygen, it gives us a lot of energy, that is 38 ATP molecules, and carbon dioxide and waters are the byproducts they are produced, which are then excreted by the body in different ways. The types of respiration. We have two types of respiration. One is aerobic respiration and the other one is anaerobic respiration. We will discuss them in details later on. You may heard about the term metabolism. What is metabolism? I think so you all know about that. Metabolism, let me explain it if you don't know. Metabolism is the sum of all chemical reaction occurring in the body. Like all type of chemical reactions which occurs in the body are known as metabolic reactions, or that process is known as metabolism. Metabolism further consists of two types. One is anabolism and the other one is catabolism. Anabolism, as it's known by constructive processes. Constructive processes means the small molecules, they'll joins together to form large molecules. So that large molecules, like for example C6H12O6, in the previous reaction we see that glucose molecule, it consists of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So carbon, hydrogen and oxygen are the small molecules, and they unite together to form large molecule that is known as carbohydrates types, that is glucose. And the reaction which occurs, are the examples of such reactions like anabolic reactions, is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis occurs in plants. The second one is catabolism. Catabolism is a destructive process And in this process, those large molecules which are produced in anabolic reactions are broken down into small molecules. Like that glucose molecule C6H12O6 will be broken down into small molecules like carbon dioxide and water. And the example of such type of reactions are respiration. Okay, the types of respiration. The first one is aerobic respiration. The respiration that takes place in the presence of oxygen is called as aerobic respiration because it uses air which contains oxygen. So the type of reactions or the type of respiration which occurs in the presence of oxygen is called as aerobic respiration. Oxygen is involved in such type of reactions or in the breakdown of glucose molecules. The aerobic respiration involves utilization of oxygen for the breakdown of chemical bonds in glucose to release energy in high amounts. Energy in high amounts means that 38 molecules of ATP are released from the breakdown of one glucose molecule. So that glucose molecule, it contains high energy bonds. When those bonds are broken down in the presence of oxygen, they releases huge amount of energy. It is the chief source of energy for plants and animals. Like we always do this process, but sometimes we switched into the anaerobic respiration, but most of the times animals and plants, they perform aerobic respiration. Animals and plants that uses oxygen for respiration are called as aerobes. All organisms that uses oxygen for their metabolism or for the breakdown of glucose molecule are known as aerobes. So majority of animals, like all animals, they perform this process. They are aerobic in nature. The reaction for aerobic respiration is given below. C6H12O6, in the presence of oxygen, 6 molecules of oxygens are there. To release or to produce 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water plus energy. Here they shows 36 kilocalories of energy. So this 36 kilocalories of energy is in the above reaction we shows 38 molecules, and here we show 36 molecules. So those two molecules are produced in glycolysis reaction, which is both used for aerobic and anaerobic reactions. So only in aerobic reaction, like starting from the Krebs cycle, we have 36 kilocalories energy, and when we add 2 molecules of glycolysis, it gives us 38 kilocalories of energy. All the organisms that obtain energy by aerobic respiration or by aerobic means cannot live without the oxygen. Like we don't have like that much instant of using less amount of energy for our processes. Like the usual daily life processes can be run with a huge amount of energy. We just uses like we can live without oxygen for some time being, like for a short time period, but we cannot live without oxygen for longer period of time because our body needs a lot of energy, and we are multicellular organisms. So multicellular organisms, we have millions of cells, millions and trillions of cells are there in our bodies. So those cells, they cannot live without oxygen. So aerobic respiration occurs in multicellular organisms all the time, but sometimes it switches to anaerobic respiration. This is because if there is no oxygen, they cannot get energy from the food which they eat. Aerobic respiration produces more energy because a complete breakdown of glucose occurs during respiration by the use of oxygen. As I told you before, that the glucose molecules are broken down completely. Complete oxidation of glucose occurs during aerobic respiration. And due to the complete breakdown of food molecules in the presence of oxygen, we get that much huge amount of energy, like 36 ATP molecules. Here is the second type of respiration, that is anaerobic respiration. During anaerobic respiration, there is no oxygen involved in the breakdown of glucose molecules. So if we want to break down glucose molecules here, we don't need oxygen in anaerobic respiration. It is a compulsion for higher animals and a routine life activity or life processes in unicellular organisms. Like in this process, incomplete oxidation of food material is being done and produces carbon dioxide and alcohol. And here a little amount of energy is released, that is approximately 2 ATP molecules. So 2 ATP molecules in anaerobic respiration and 36 ATP molecules in aerobic respiration. There is a huge difference of 34 ATP molecule. Beside this, other organic matter like citric acid, oxalic acid, lactic acid, etc. are also produced in some organisms. Like the product of anaerobic respiration differ from one organisms to other. This process is also known as intramolecular respiration. The anaerobic respiration takes place in organisms like yeast, some bacteria, and parasitic worms. Most of the bacterias, yeast, they all do the same process all the time, but and parasitic worms. But in higher animals and plants that can survive and obtain energy even in the absence of oxygen are called as anaerobes, or anaerobic respiratory organisms. So parasitic worms, you may heard about the worm tapeworm, which is found in the alimentary canal in the large intestine and small intestine of human beings. Those parasitic worm, the tapeworm, they didn't use oxygen for their respiration. They use like anaerobic respiration to get energy from the food they eat, because they eat already digested food. They didn't need any digestive system. They don't have any digestive system, so their cells get prepared food which is already prepared, are broken down into small pieces or into small substances by the host body in which they live. In higher animals like plants and animals, we can survive like without oxygen, but for short period of time, not for longer period of time. The equation for anaerobic respiration is given below. Glucose molecule are broken down into alcohol plus carbon dioxide and small amount of energy. Here in animals, this reaction is different, like that glucose molecule is broken down into lactic acid plus carbon dioxide plus energy. Okay, yeast is a microorganism. It is a single cell fungus. In yeast, a single cell represents the whole organism. A very low amount of energy is released in this process. Like they didn't need a lot of energy. The energy which is produced through anaerobic respiration is efficient for them, or is enough for them. So they don't need oxygen for respiratory purposes because of their less number of cells, like single cell. Yeast respires anaerobically, and during this process yeast converts glucose into alcohol, and this process also is useful for the production of beverages like alcoholic products, beer and other wines and other alcoholic products. And in the bakery products, like we use the toast and breads, etc. The size of the bread rises due to the anaerobic respiration of bacteria and yeast occurring there. Anaerobic respiration produces much less energy because the only partial breakdown of glucose occurs in anaerobic respiration in the absence of oxygen. Here, as I told you, glucose molecules are not completely broken down into their products. So the incomplete breakdown or the partial breakdown of glucose gives us very little amount of energy, which is 2 molecules of ATP. All the organisms which obtain energy by anaerobic respiration can live without oxygen. In human beings, like in us, anaerobic respiration occurs in our muscles. So whenever we are short in supply of oxygen to our muscles during heavy exercise or during heavy activity, when we are playing or when we are doing some heavy work, so then our muscles are continuously in motion, and the demand of oxygen is higher than the supply of oxygen. So when there is a difference in demand and supply, then our muscles, they starts respiring anaerobically, and due to that anaerobic respiration, the food in our muscles is not completely broken down into its products. So we are short with energy, and energy is not provided to the muscles in large amounts or in that amount which is needed to them. So due to that heavy physical exercise, our muscles need more oxygen, more and more oxygen they need, but the oxygen supply is less. Okay, so that is insufficient for them. So because of that, then there are some conditions which occurs in our muscles, like muscle cramps, muscle fatigue. All those occurs due to the happening of anaerobic respiration in our muscles. Okay, it brings about the partial breakdown of glucose to form lactic acid. Like yeast gives us alcohol, ethyl alcohol. The byproduct of anaerobic respiration in microorganisms like yeast and bacteria is ethyl alcohol. But in human beings, in the muscles of human beings, the byproduct of incomplete breakdown of glucose molecule is lactic acid. That lactic acid is accumulated in the muscles, which causes muscle cramps or muscle fatigue. That fatigue is later on, like after 1 day or 2 days, the muscle cramps or fatigue or the pain which we feel in our muscles is relaxed. Why? Because that accumulated lactic acid again converted into glucose when we are at resting condition or when we stop that activity. So the accumulated lactic acid causes muscle cramps and muscle fatigue. When that lactic acid again is converted into glucose, then the cramps and fatigue is over. Okay, here is a question for you people at the end of this lecture. Question is, in which human part anaerobic respiration can take place? It's a simple question. You can answer this. Thank you for watching.